Mark IV Power Armour. Story continued from Ullik the Unreasonable playlist. So much has happened. So much. In a few scant years, everything we knew was gone. All of the pillars of our world kicked over, and the palace had come crashing down. We were all members of the lodges now. Ullik brought us all in as one, and we, his guard, we ruled there. Even Grulgor might nod to us inside, maybe, but he did not sneer. From being at the bottom of the pile, we were now tip of the top. We followed in his comet's trail, for Ullik's rise was now meteoric. I remember the day that we knew it, the final sign of being chosen. We had all been working on our armour, repairs, cleaning, stripping where we could, but most of it went to our tech marines or the Adepts of Mars. They were fine suits of warplate, but they had been with us since the death of the Xenos King, and before. It was deemed a near miracle, for not one of us had passed, not one of us had been slain, not one of us had been killed in action. We served the Unreasonable One, and he kept us close. We fought, and we fought hard, but we did not get thrown into the thresher like most. That day, he simply marched in, stood at the door, and caught our eyes. One by one, he locked us in. He had a strangely magnetic power now, authority and dignity. But there was always that threat. It exuded from him. He then simply nodded his head. We were to follow him. He led us to the cages, but when the doors opened, he sent us in first. We padded in at high alert, but then we smelt it. Then we felt it. Then we heard it. The smell, unmistakable. Freshly minted, oiled and pristine. There was no smell quite like it. For what some do not know is that when you are one with your plate, wear it for weeks at a time, combined over years, it's almost like your scent is indelibly printed on it. And gaining makeshift repairs cannibalized from other suits, it has their smell, not yours, not for some time. But eventually, the warplate collects a smell, almost impossible for baseline humans to discern. But I can smell it. And here was an experience I had not had in near a decade more. The odour of brand new plate. He walked in behind us and simply clapped, and the illuminators went up. And there it was. We could feel the ripples of the vibrations from it, so much quieter than previously. The hum was amazing, so soft, like a purr. And it was pristine, it was sleek, it was racks of new warplate, one for each of us. With compliments of the Pale King himself, beamed Ullik. And we each poured at the plate in awe, and it was even better when worn. Lighter than Mark III, more protection than Mark II. Quieter than either. More large plates, it's true, yet also more actuators and joint movement. Enhanced power in the backpack. And we were before many of the veteran units to get ours. We wore them with pride. Yet again, Ullik had provided. Yes, it came from the king, but he was why we all wore it now. Only 3 weeks later, it happened. The event we had all been secretly waiting for, and it was glorious, and it was terrible. It would be dubbed the Drop Site Massacre. And we were right in the thick of it. We were tasked by the Pale King himself as well. We watched on as he said to Ullik, "Go out and cause trouble. 3 sips, Ullik, as much as your heart desires." And oh, he did. We did. While the 3 initial legions came down, we crept forward into prearranged positions and laid in wait. We hit them as soon as a few squads had passed, right up out of concealed foxholes into the middle of them, and we rent and shot and tore and slew. And it was our own kind we fought. For the first time ever, we killed Marines. We went into the Iron Hands first, and the new plate was worth every second of it all, for we could outmaneuver Mark IIIs, with a tiny touch faster and stronger than 2s. And as we were already elite, these tiny fractions of seconds on our side, from our new servos, it told all of the difference. Between gods of war, in bolter and blade work, a millisecond may as well be a millennium. But it didn't end there. We could see the Titans annihilating entire companies, the heavy fire coming down in carpets, and when the second wave came down, Ullik laughed. The rest of us involuntarily shrugged, but he chortled. Because they were really with us. They were with us. Oh, how the loyalists cheered, thinking they were being reinforced. But their cries turned to wails when the second wave legions turned their guns on them. Having enough sport, and not wanting to share a theatre with Night Lords and World Eaters, we went to the west and hunted salamanders. And within 2 days, there was no more fight in any of them, and we now walked the mounds. While others caroused, celebrated, or drank, we were out there on the depression. Ullik had us bring his pet apothecary, Meganel. We were executing those who had slipped into the torpor-like state where Astartes self-repair. We prevented that. But that was not the primary reason to be out there. For Ullik had Manganel harvest gene seed, like a river. And that is where we found him, an Iron Hand. His body shuddering, his head damaged, but around him, were a stack of World Eaters. He had slain over a dozen of those drooling maniacs. It was easy to tell by the cuts, the accuracy. It was all his work. And Ullik looked down on the Marine, and he had that glint in his eye. We brought him back, you see, this Marine, this veteran. His blade and plate denoted him as a high officer, a hero of his company. Not anymore. Manganel stabilized his condition, and Ullik went to work on him. Days later, the 3, as we called them, met again. Our Lord, Ullik of the Death Guard, Hexamon of the Emperor's Children, and Tarax Antrax of the Iron Warriors. They drank rare Amasek of a Xenos design. It raised their flushes. I was outside the doors, and they were in high spirits, and I listened. "Now, I know you didn't want anything, Tarax," said Ullik, "but I found him, and I couldn't resist." At this, the towering Marine walks into the room. He is blank of eye, glaring at all but Ullik. But his armour is repaired. He wears the colours of the Iron Warriors now. Ullik continued. "He's all yours. A guard who will never ever question your word, never be bribed, never betray. Soldier, he said, looking at this iron warrior. This is the man I spoke of, your new master. You will do all he says. You will be his shield. His life is yours. His death is yours. You will serve him and no other. No instruction given by any, even me, can now be countermanded. This is your master for all time. Now, greet Tarax Antarax, as you should. And he knelt, and held up his sword for inspection. Tarax, I found him amidst a pile of world-eaters. He knows his trade. He's a veteran par excellence, and he's all yours. Tarax Antarax inspected the sword, then the marine. You've outdone yourself, my friend. I have to admit to having my reservations about some of my men. This will do nicely. And you're sure it's permanent, his conversion? To which Ullik responded, oh yeah. Arthas here is a few bolts short of a full volley, but he's good at what he does, and he will never turn on you. I broke him, then I remade him. Well, after a few alterations. Ullik then passes Tarax Antarax a box. Of course, we all know what's inside. Brain matter. Not too much, but enough. A memento. And all three of them laughed. What do you call him? Said Tarax. Oh, he is Arthas, the Unmaker. Ullik then turned to the captain of the Emperor's children. And Hexamon, your Cato seed is prepared as agreed. The bounty was rich, my brother. It was rich. And now, in our terms, so are you. Rich in seed. Nothing better, said Hexamon. Tarax then stated, I feel this little war is going to be good for us if we stick together. And all three leered. To be continued. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, faces, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. We also have channels for mythology and natural history, links in the description. We now also have super thanks, so like, subscribe, and throw me a coin if you enjoy the video more than usual, or patron of course. Now, let us proceed. For today, we are to continue the run of entries concerning the second skin of the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marine. Alas, I am forced again to state that this is no normal suit of armour, for in truth, few of the models and marks of power armour are anything but interesting and unique, but the Mark IV is a sign. It is a strange reminder that once upon a time the Imperium not only expanded its borders, but also its mind. For the Mark IV was the cutting edge of technologies that had been brought back to the adepts of Mars from across the galaxy. New materials, new knowledge, or at the very least, old knowledge new to them, all harvested during the course of the Crusade. And they actually moved forward. They improved the armour of their marines. But let us hear the truth of the matter in the usual way. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Mark IV, Imperial Maximus Armour. At the end of the Great Crusade, the Space Marines found their armour wearing out. While some legions chose to continue local production and maintenance, the Adeptus Mechanicus of Mars started to design a new variant for centralized issue, which was to be designated the Mark IV or Imperial Maximus suit. At the Mark IV stage of the power armor development, Space Marine armor began to take an appearance recognizable as contemporary power armor. The main change being the abandonment of the separate abutting plates in favor of larger inflexible armor casings incorporating flexible joints. This marginally reduced mobility, but was far easier to produce and maintain. Technical secrets recovered on newly conquered worlds allowed Mars to develop the more efficient armor, improving the quality of protection and reducing the suit's weight at the same time. Improved armoring of the power cables allowed the main arm and chest supply to be safely relocated to the exterior of the armor, while the use of new material reduced the size and number of cables. The helmet was a completely new design, the basic shape inspired by the sweeping front of the Mark III. In Mark IV and later versions, the helm is no longer fixed, but moves with the wearer's head. This represented the constructor's increasing experience with neural connector gear, and the new material which flooded into the Martian workshops as the Crusade progressed. Mark IV armor was envisioned at the time to be the ultimate and final step of Space Marine armor, able to offer the best protection in a variety of conditions. Many of the Space Marine legions were entirely or partially re-equipped with it, although the order of which legions received the armor would shortly prove to be of significance. As a result of its widespread production and use prior to and during the Horus Heresy, Mark IVs are the most common of the pre-Heresy armor suits still in service during the 41st millennium. The pattern was initially most widespread in legions that were favored by the War Master Horus, and thus would become synonymous with traitor Astartes. Notably, a few chapters such as the Red Scorpions and Iron Hands are still capable of producing new Mark IV suits in the 41st millennium. The rounded nozzles on either side of the backpack are not only for heat resetting, but also could be used as stabilizer jets for use in zero-gravity conditions." End quote. Now I make no bones that I am more of a fan of Mark III and Mark V, and nothing will ever be more Marines to me than the first model I ever laid eyes upon, the old beaky, the Mark VI power armor. But the Mark IV has a unique helmet, a rugged look like number 3, but is more developed, closer to the more frequently seen on a Warhammer 40k board, of which, I assure you, I am much more accustomed. But I will indeed be getting some units of this mark for my own army, for if you play Horus Heresy, then surely this is one of those armors that one simply must have in the lineup, even if it's only 1 or 2. For the Horus Heresy Marines are diverse and exciting, as they herald from a different era, made for a totally different war than the Primaris one can buy today, a war on a scale that can never be replicated. Because, after the Horus Heresy, there simply was not enough left to ever field such potent armies again. Thank you for your precious time. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.